What if the one you're destined to love is the one you're fated to destroy? She was sold for honor, abandoned for power, forgotten like a stain, no name too noble to carry shame. But fate does not forget, only waits. Now she returns, crowned in fire, cloaked in vengeance, and holding the hearts of 2 kingdoms in her hand. If you're ready to feel every heartbeat, every betrayal, every impossible kiss, hit subscribe and let the story begin. The chains clinked like whispers of a past she couldn't outrun. Her feet, bare and blistered, touched the frost-lined stones of a foreign palace as the great obsidian doors opened to swallow her whole. "You are no one here," the guard said, shoving her forward. Inside, the throne room of King Valen was a study in cruel beauty. Black marble veined with crimson, like blood frozen in stone. He sat not like a monarch, but a predator with time to kill. His silver eyes studied her with disinterest. And then, curiosity. "Why send me a child for peace?" he asked. She didn't answer. Her eyes burned. Her silence screamed louder than any plea. "I won't beg. I won't break. I will remember every name that handed me over." Later, she was not thrown into a dungeon, but into silk, a chamber adorned in foreign wealth, perfumed with myrrh and shadow, a gilded cage, and in the corner, a woman in chains, skin marked with sigils, eyes glowing faintly violet. "So, the lamb arrives," said the prisoner. "Will you be slaughtered, or become the wolf?" Steel clashed in the training yard. She fell again, and again. Each bruise whispered, "You survived for this." The prince, Kairos, watched from above, arms folded, expression unreadable. He was nothing like his father. Lean, quiet, and distant. At dinner, he spoke only once. "You'll die here if you don't learn to fight. No one mourns the gift." That night, her dreams bled. A woman wreathed in flame stood in ruins, whispering a name not hers, but felt like hers. In her chamber, the chained woman, Eris, spoke in riddles. They called her the Forgotten Queen. She burned the world to remake it, and she wore a face like yours. The next morning, the guards tried to speak to her in their harsh tongue. She understood them perfectly, but no one had taught her. What are you becoming? Behind a tapestry, she discovered the truth. A contract, sealed in wax and blood. Her family hadn't just bargained her away, they bound her soul to a pact of cleansing, signed by the church and nobility. To restore honor, the vessel shall be exiled beyond return, her name struck, her rights revoked. She was not punished for love. She was erased for defiance, for being too powerful. "They feared you," Eris said. "You were never meant to survive exile, but you did. And now, the chains burn from the inside out." Using forbidden glyphs carved into her skin, Eris helped her sever the bond. Pain scorched through her body like molten silver. The sigil on her back pulsed alive. It didn't destroy her. It awakened something. In the mirror, her reflection shimmered, eyes no longer her own. A mark spiraled down her spine, older than language. Rain drummed the glass as Kairos entered her chamber unannounced. She had a blade at his throat before he could speak. "I came to warn you," he said. "They're watching you. My father doesn't trust miracles." She didn't lower the blade. "Then why are you here?" "Because I've seen prisoners. And you don't act like one." Their eyes locked. Not trust, not yet, but something raw. Later in the garden of night-flowering thorns, he asked, "What did they take from you?" She didn't answer with words, just held out her scarred wrists. "Everything I was before this place." But in her sleep, the dreams returned, this time with a voice. The heir of flame must choose, to rule or to consume. Deep beneath the palace lay the forbidden wing, a library not of books, but of memories, carved into stone and sealed with blood. She entered through a crack in the wall. Dust coated every surface. The air smelled of iron and old sorrow. In one chamber, a carving showed a woman surrounded by flames. a crown hovering above her bleeding hands. At her feet, the same sigil now marked on her own back. She reached for it, and fire burst from her palm. The room ignited. She staggered back, choking on smoke, the magic tearing out of her without control. Guards rushed in, but stopped cold at the sight of her glowing eyes. Later, Valen summoned her. "You will tell me what you are," he said. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I know who made me this way." His expression shifted, not to anger, but recognition. "Then you are more dangerous than I thought." The road that once led her into exile now brought her home in silence, veiled in ash and memory. Celine rode cloaked among a scouting party under pretense of northern inspection, her identity hidden beneath layers of dust and dark wool. The very soil seemed to remember her. With every step toward her old village, the wind whispered names she hadn't dared say in years. The place where she'd been born no longer existed. Not truly. The church had burned it 3 winters after her banishment, claiming her shame had stained the land. What remained were blackened beams and twisted iron from the gate that once guarded the courtyard fountain. She found the edge of it, cracked, dry, half buried in vines, and there, carved with a child's hand, the ghost of her name, Celine of House Thorn, as if the earth itself had tried to hold on to what others erased. Behind the ruined chapel stood a stone marked with her name and a date, the year of her banishment. A grave, a lie. They hadn't just given her away. They'd killed her in absentia, declared her lost, condemned her memory so they wouldn't have to feel the weight of her screams. They didn't think I'd survive, and now they pray I never come back. That night, she didn't sleep. Kairos found her seated beneath the shattered bell tower, her hands coated in dust and her eyes empty. He approached slowly, carefully, like a man stepping toward a wounded beast. "You knew," she said, voice hollow. "Did you know they buried me while I still breathed?" He knelt beside her. "I didn't know, but I believe it." She let the silence stretch, heavy with all the words they'd never say. Then, without looking at him, she whispered, "I don't know if I want to burn it all down, or if I already have." The northern mages summoned her at dawn. Not with ceremony, but with a blade at her throat and a whispered decree. She carries the flame. She must be judged. They took her to the hollow temple, a cathedral sunken into the bones of a dead mountain, where the last known vessel of the forgotten flame had once wept blood onto stone. Here, time moved differently, and truth could not be hidden. The trial was not a battle, but a confrontation of self. She was forced to walk through the Mirror of Origins, an ancient spell construct that reflected one's deepest essence. What Celine saw nearly brought her to her knees. Herself, robed in blackened fire, standing atop a city of corpses. A crown of twisted bone burned on her head. Her eyes were empty. The visions spiraled. First, her childhood. Her mother's scream as Celine was dragged away. Her father turning his back. Then, the present. Eris lying chained, eyes accusing. You're becoming what they feared. And finally, the future. Kairos, bloodied, reaching for her as she stepped over his body and onto the throne. Inside her own head, a voice echoed. Vessel, wielder, flame reborn. You are the edge between salvation and annihilation. When she emerged, her lips were cracked with blood, her breath ragged, but she still stood. The council stared at her with wary reverence. The high sage bowed his head. You passed, he said, but you are not cleansed. The fire still waits. 3 nights later, the northern capital fell into chaos. King Valen was found dead, his veins blackened, lips blue. Poison. The palace erupted in fury, but Celine felt only stillness, as if something inevitable had finally arrived. The High Council gathered, arguing over succession. Kairos, though heir, had vanished into the mountains days prior without explanation. The court whispered of war, rebellion, divine punishment. Celine walked into that chamber, her steps slow, her presence terrible. I will take the crown, she said, voice like obsidian cracking. Not as heir, as victor. They laughed, until she invoked the rite of flame, a sacred challenge forgotten by most, requiring the contender to defeat all willing claimants in ritual combat. One by one, they stepped forward, and one by one, she broke them. Not with brute force, but precision. Fire danced at her fingertips. Her eyes burned gold. You fear me because I survived what you could not even endure. When the final opponent fell, the hall went silent. She stood, blood on her cheek, a fractured circlet in her hand. She didn't ask for fealty. She didn't need to. They bowed. As weeks passed, her reign took root like wild vines, fast, unyielding, and strange. She abolished the branding of magic wielders. She freed entire provinces from debt bondage. She invited the chained seers to walk the palace as honored advisors. And yet, her justice was merciless. Those who betrayed the realm were executed without trial. Her court lived in awe and fear. In the Garden of Thorns, now hers alone, Eris finally walked freely. She stared at Selene, no longer prisoner, but queen. You've become what they feared, she said, voice soft. But is that a curse or a choice? Selene didn't answer. Instead, she wrote a letter, sealed in black wax, and gave it to a raven. The message bore only 4 words. I am coming home. It was addressed to House Thorn. The war drums began to beat. Snow fell as the army gathered, not soft, but sharp, like ash pretending to be innocent. From her balcony, Selene watched 10,000 march under her sigil, a burning crown over shattered chains. The banner was not just hers. It was a declaration. The girl you threw away returns with fire at her back. As she rode through her ranks, faces turned toward her. Soldiers, mages, exiles. Many of them had also been discarded by history, by bloodlines, by honor. Now they followed her, not as Queen of the North, as symbol, as vengeance made flesh. Then, without warning, a shadow approached her vanguard. Kairos. Battle-worn, hooded, but alive. He dropped to one knee. You wear the crown, he said. I do not ask for forgiveness. Only the chance to stop you if you go too far. She stared at him, wind tugging at her cloak. And how far is too far? When you burn those who still love you. She said nothing, but in her chest, something cracked open again. Not weakness, but grief. The gates of her homeland rose before her like the jaws of a beast she once feared. High walls, same stone, same banners, red and silver. But now, her name was not a whisper in the dark. It was a reckoning written across the sky. She sent messengers under white flags. 3 returned with blades in their backs. The 4th returned with a single word carved into his chest. Whore. Selene didn't flinch. She ordered the army forward. By nightfall, her forces surrounded the city. Fires danced on the horizon. And from the walls, her father watched. No longer a lord, but a hollowed husk in velvet. When his voice echoed through the courtyard via magic-conveyed announcement, it trembled. Selene, if you remember anything of your family, stand down. She stepped forward, not into view, but into voice. Her reply crackled through the sky like thunder. Family, buried me alive. In the silence that followed, she finally felt it. The moment they realized she was no longer theirs. Under moonlight and disguise, she entered the city through the catacombs, a forgotten passage known only to the dead. Kairos went with her, blades sheathed, heart in his throat. He watched her face as they walked through the mausoleum that bore her family's name. In the royal chambers, she found her mother. Older, thinner, but not broken. She stood before the fire with a goblet in hand and said only, I thought I'd see your ghost before I saw your face. Selene didn't answer. She couldn't. The weight of the years hung between them like chains. But then, her mother spoke. I begged them not to do it. Your father agreed to the exile, but the church made it law. If he had resisted, they would have ruined us all. Selene trembled. So you let them ruin me instead. Tears finally fell from the woman who had stood silent in the council all those years ago. You were never meant to survive, but I thank every god that you did." They embraced, not out of forgiveness, but shared pain. The high priest had waited for her in the temple, the same man who had signed her exile and branded her soul as cursed. Now older, armored in holy relics, and surrounded by Inquisition guards, he welcomed her with venom. "You bring the flame," he said, "but I carry the chains of gods." Celine walked forward without hesitation. The floor beneath her boots pulsed with the magic of old spells, but she didn't stop. She raised a single hand, and fire erupted from the walls, tearing down every illusion. The priest raised a blade of silver flame. "You are not the queen. You are the unmaking." Their battle shook the cathedral. Spells cracked marble. Her rage matched his dogma. Both ancient, both absolute. But in the end, it was not power that won. It was clarity. "You tried to erase me because I reminded you of your failures. You feared what you could never control." And with that, she shattered his staff, stripped him of his authority, and bound him in the same chains he once used on her. At dawn, her father was brought before her throne in chains. The once proud lord now bent and faded, lips tight, eyes glassy. "You have your victory," he said, spitting blood. "You always wanted this." She walked slowly to him, no guards, no crown, only the silence of a daughter who no longer needed his approval. "I wanted you to love me," she whispered. "But that was never part of the deal." He tried to kneel. "I see now. I was wrong. Let me die with dignity." She looked down. The whole hall waited. Justice or mercy? "You died the day you chose your name over your blood." She turned her back. He was taken away, alive, forgotten. The war was over. The church dismantled. The lords bowed. Her kingdom, once shattered, now stood unified, not by fear, but by awe. Celine stood alone in the ruins of the temple garden. The vines grew back slowly, curling around old altars like time forgiving itself. Kairos appeared beside her, quietly, offering a simple question. "Is this enough?" She didn't answer right away. Her hands bore no rings. Her crown rested not on her head, but in her chambers, untouched. "I don't want to be remembered for what I destroyed," she said. "I want to be remembered for what I rebuilt." Kairos took her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "Then let's begin," he said. In the quiet that followed war, a child runs through the halls of the rebuilt palace. She wears a carved wooden crown, laughs like thunder, and calls out for her queen. Celine steps into the sunlight, no longer shadowed, no longer hunted, just whole. "They sold me to erase me, but I returned to rewrite everything." She kneels before the child and says, "One day I'll tell you the story, but not today. Today we plant." And with her bare hands, she digs into the earth, not to bury, but to sow.